Hello, and welcome to the Church Rehab podcast. I am Pastor Michelle Kennedy, one of the pastors at Embrace You Ministries. I have started this podcast and titled it Church Rehab because of the current state of the church, the way we view it, our current experiences. We need to do a rehab. See, people go to rehab when something has happened and they want to restore something back to its present state. The way we view the church, it needs restoring. The way we think about church, it needs restoring. We currently have such a disdained view of church and what church is and why we attend church. And I think we need church rehab. And I have been working on building this platform so that I can create a safe space for us to heal, for us to grow, for us to thrive. I am not a church basher. That is not what this is for at all. I'm a pastor. So why would I go around bashing church? But what this is about is having the real conversation about our experience in church, things we've gone through, things that we wish we had learned, things we learned wrong in church, the expectations that we put on people because they say they attend church. Like this platform has been created for the sole purpose of having the conversation, healing. I'm a master life coach. Part of what I do is help people get from where they are to where they want to be. And I feel that this podcast is going to also be a platform that does that. Like right now, we need a different view of church. We need to rehab how we look at church. So in my research, I started thinking about the word rehab. Like, why do people go to rehab? When it comes to rehab, like people go to rehab because they have drug addictions, alcohol addictions, food addictions, sex addictions, any kind of addiction that you can think of. People go to rehab to rehabilitate and so that they can break the habit of what they depend upon. Also, people go to rehab when they're injured. Like people go to rehab for therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, because they're wanting to rehabilitate whatever has been harmed, whatever has been injured. Now, think about it. Think about our view of the church. Has it not been harmed? Think about it. Like, just think about the recent things that have been said, done on social media. Yeah, we need a new view of the church. Like there are some people who have had some less than churchy experiences in church. I am one of those people. I was born almost in church. And when I say it, people always laugh, but no, literally. My mama went in labor on her way to church. So I've been in church all my life. I've had some amazing times in church. I've built some wonderful relationships. I've learned how to be a sacrificial worker in the church. There's not a whole lot in church I haven't done, starting from the door to the pulpit. I've been a usher. I've cleaned the church. I've worked in the church. I've been a pastor administrative assistant. I've been a church clerk. Like everything you can think about that you can do in church at some point of time over these last 49 years. Yeah, I've done it. But what I will say is I was also hurt in church. See, we don't like to talk about church hurt. And many of people say, oh, there's no such thing as church hurt. Well, I beg to differ because people get hurt in church. And if we say we are the church, it is we the people who hurt people in church. It's possible for people to be church hurt from their perspective. I feel that we are actually hurt by people who are hurting who attend church with us. That does not negate the fact that as a church member, you were injured. But what happens is we're not able to say, you hurt me. We're not able to have the conversation to say, what happened made me feel some type of way without us being judged, without us being looked upon as being a troublemaker or even being evil. But there are times when we go to church broke and leave church broken. So I believe that this podcast is going to start creating some conversation about things that happen and things that we experience in church. Rehabilitation of a thing is to rehab it and restore it back to its present state. But what I want to do with church rehab is to teach you not how to just do church, but how to do kingdom. That's right. No matter what you have done, no matter where you are in your walk, like there's another opportunity for you to make a different decision. And this podcast is going to set the tone for that. See, I told you that I was almost born in church. I've been in church all my life. And currently, I'm the pastor of a church. And I've also been a backslider. See, after being in church all my life, I backslid. What caused me to walk away from church? Church hurt, church people, hurt endured at the hand of leaders. I found myself broken, wounded, hurt, distraught, destroyed, and making a silent vow to myself that I will never return back to church. Yeah. But I realized in me backsliding, and I always make the joke to say I ain't backslide, I slid backwards because I went back to my former life, all the things that I was doing before Christ. When I left the church, I also left Christ because I did not know Christ outside of church. So, in this church rehab, I want to encourage you to experience Christ both in and out the church. How do you do that? You're able to do that by building a personal relationship with Christ, a relationship that extends far beyond the four walls of the church. What I discovered in backsliding is that I was judgmental. I was a checkbox Christian. Like I checked all the box. I did all the things that church told me I was supposed to do. But what I did not learn in church is a personal relationship with Christ where I could go directly to him, where I could have a conversation with him, where I could share my thoughts and my feelings with him and just be raw and honest about where I am and how I feel. When I backslid, I learned that because I didn't want any parts of church. My rehabilitation was me learning who Christ was for myself. See, I know we are now going back in the building. The pandemic is over and we are starting to gather the way we used to. But one thing the pandemic taught us as a body is that church wasn't necessary for us to still see Christ. And for those who never knew him outside of church, yeah, there was a struggle, there was a war, there was a misplace of where the church was, because it's like it's us, the church, then Christ. And it wasn't created to be that way. We are supposed to pray not that the church comes, but that his kingdom comes. And the kingdom of God is built up of laws, principles, and systems that we are just not currently taught in the church. So I had to learn who God was for myself. There was no altar calls, there was no laying of the hand, and all of those things have its purpose. But when it came to me learning who Christ was for me, I couldn't do it by way of the church. See, before, when uh I was good and saved, like, I couldn't understand how people would backslide. I couldn't understand how people would walk away from Christ. I couldn't understand how people would turn their back. Me backsliding gave me another level of compassion for people and what they go through, what they endure, because I learned firsthand that backsliding is one decision. And the day I made that decision, it changed me. It changed my thoughts. It changed my feelings. It changed the way I saw church. It changed the way I saw church people. I vowed that I would never step foot back in church. That's how wounded I was. Like, all those years I had experienced hurt in church. But for the first time, I was wounded. My soul was hurting. My soul was broken. And I couldn't see Christ for the church. In this church rehab, like, I want to be able to have the conversations about why we go to church, have the conversation about why we leave church, have the conversation about what we didn't get while we were in church, and also create a platform where we can learn how to live and how to thrive the King's way. Christ said he came to bring the kingdom of God. So, shifting our focus from learning to do it the church way, which didn't work, and learning to do it the King's way. Like, I want to reclaim our our thought about church. There was a time when Sunday morning came, I was happy about going to church. There was a time when Sunday morning came, it was all about getting up and going to church. When the last time you had that feeling? Honestly, think about it. When is the last time you woke up on a Sunday morning and said, I can't wait to get to church? When is the last time on Saturday night you said to you, I can't wait to wake up and go to church? Like, that's where I want us to be. Where we have church in the right perspective. Where we understand that church has been created for us and not us created for church. Where we can go to church and feel safe. Where we can go to church and not be judged. Well, we can go to church and somebody can ask me, "Hey, how you doing?" And I can say, "I'm not doing good today," without my salvation being questioned. See, that's what I want. I want to be able to change the narrative about how we see church, how we think about church, by putting it in the right perspective. See, church, it should not be God, church, than us. It should be God and us. We shouldn't have to go through the church to get to God. We shouldn't have to think that the only way I can be a part of the kingdom is by being a part of a church. Church was created for us. Church is a place where we're supposed to learn, where we're supposed to grow, and where we're supposed to thrive. That only takes place when church is done the King's way. So it's time for us to shift the narrative. On this podcast, I'm going to have guests to come on, and we're going to have the real conversation about our church experience in a safe environment where we can really be true and transparent about what happened to us in church. How how we were damaged, how we were treated, how we were mistreated, to encourage someone to know that regardless to what your experience have been in church, let's learn church the kingdom's way. Let's reclaim church. Let's go back to church. But we want to do church right. There's been generations who have walked away from church because of their church experience. One of the people who I feel and I believe I'm called to is preachers' kids. And I say that because I attract a lot of them in my coaching business, where preachers' kids have been hurt and wounded by their church experience, but they know that they want to be a part of the church. But there's a healing that has to take place. There's an acknowledgement of hurt that has to take place. There is a recreation of the narrative. There's a repositioning of the church that has to take place in order for you to be able to learn, grow, and thrive in church. I'm a preacher's kid. I know um, the hurt that takes place in church. I know the expectations that are put on preachers' kids. I know it. Why? Because I felt it firsthand. Not only that, in my first marriage, my ex husband was a pastor. So then my children are preachers' kids. So I know the expectation and the unrealistic views that was placed on my children. How people thought my children were supposed to be or supposed to act simply because their father was a pastor, or that they were supposed to be saved because their parents were preachers. That's not the case. You got to search out your own soul salvation. You can't get saved through the Christ of your mama or grandmama. You got to know him for yourself. And my children had an experience, and I know the ridicule and the shame that we experienced when my 14-year-old daughter was pregnant. It was that experience that caused me to say, I don't want no part of church, and I don't want no part of church people. We felt like we was done wrong. But I'm so grateful that the Lord did not leave me in my mess. I'm so grateful that He did not return for me while I was in my sin, and He has given me an opportunity to, when I got strengthened, to now strengthen the brethren. Also, as a former pastor wife, that's a whole nother experience. That's an experience that will make you lose your sanity. How do I know? Because I almost lost mine. It's hard being the support to someone who support others. It's difficult. It really is. So I know the plight of pastors' wives. So many pastors' wives who once the marriage ended, so did their relationship with the church. Yeah, come on. You come on to the church rehab. Yeah, you come on to church rehab. Musicians, there are so many musicians who have walked away in the heart formed church, but show up every service to get on the instruments. Like it was awakening for me when my son began to share that he didn't know church outside of being a musician. Like you're in church all your life serving, but there is no relationship, there's no connectivity. Yeah, musicians, y'all come to rehab too. Yeah, I know how hard it was for me to find a space that I felt was safe, where I could share my truth about my hurt and my injuries that I experienced in church. So it is my desire that in creating this podcast, that you would hear something, that you would learn something, and that something would rehab the way you view you and the way you view the church. We're going to learn doing church the kingdom's way because we are king kids. And there are so many benefits to living the king's way. My mentor, Darius Daniels, talks about his thought process that we live on three levels. Level one is sinking, level two is surviving, level three is thriving. Level one is the culture's way. Yeah, we're going to talk about how culture has invaded the church. Level two is surviving, which is the church's way. The way the church currently is set up, yeah, we're not taught to thrive. We're going to have that conversation. But level three is the king's way. And in the kingdom, we thrive. We live John 10 to 10, that abundant life. So in church rehab, these are the things we're going to talk about. These are the things we're going to discuss. I am so grateful that you have decided to connect with us and join church rehab. I promise you, you're not going to regret it. Church Rehab, this podcast, it is going to air every first and third Friday at 8 p.m. And I'll upload the video from the recording on Saturdays and it will premiere at 10:30 a.m. I'm super excited about Church Rehab and I want you to join me. I want you to come with me. Let's learn, let's grow, and let's thrive. And again, I'm Pastor Michelle Kennedy, the pastor of Embrace You Ministries. But more than that, I'm your rehab specialist. Come on. Thank you for joining. Yes, we are. I am a winner. Victory. I am victorious. Victory. I'm undefeated. Victory. I am a winner. Victory. I am victorious. Victory. I'm undefeated. Victory. Victory. I am victorious.
victorious.